welcome back to EQ Cast. I'm your host, Christy Pritchard. This is season 2, episode 1. So I'm back off from a little bit of a break here. If you're wondering why I didn't upload anything for a little while, on today's show, I'm super excited. We had such a lovely conversation, brand new connection, brand new friend, lovely human, trained LPC therapist and trauma specialist. She also is an EMDR therapist, as well as she's really excited about the emerging psychedelic therapies, which we talk about on the show as well. We talk about big traumas, little traumas. We get into a lot of really interesting topics in this episode. So I'm really excited to welcome Winden Rowe. Hey, Winden, thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Christy. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Yes, definitely. We have been chatting for a while, so we finally made it happen. We've got a lot of topics, and some of them are psychedelics. And since you do EMDR, I'd wanted to get into that a little bit. And I also wanted to talk about the difference between little traumas and big traumas. And maybe you can just break that down. I've been reading some of your articles, and they're fabulous. You're a very eloquent writer, and I just love your style.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you talked about big and little T, so I wanted to get into it. How do you feel about that?
So, all of the above. I mean, I joke around that I'll talk to a shoebox about trauma, or the person next to me on the airplane about trauma, or my friends about trauma, or everybody's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But I'm really passionate about it, clearly. And the more that I am in this field and work in it, and the more that I just continually learn and relearn this thing that has significantly impacted my own life and then the lives of people that I work with, the more I recognize how, at least my perception and framework, that trauma is central to pretty much everything at this point in my mind. So just to give everybody a background, I'm a licensed professional therapist or licensed professional counselor, which in the United States is 2-year clinical training, and then graduate school. And then once you graduate, typically the recommendation is you take your boards as soon as you possibly can. And then to become licensed in this country, you have to do, I think I had to do 3,000 hours inside 2 to 5 years of clinical work. So it's a lot. It's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot. You're like writing these hours down going, oh my God.
Is it ever going to add up?
Yeah. And so I went to the only graduate school program in the United States that is a master's degree in trauma. So my degree is in what's called community and trauma counseling. So it's a clinical training, but I don't operate from a traditional clinical mental health framework or practice.
Yeah.
Meaning in the trauma framework, what we talk about is it's not what's wrong with you, but it's about what happened.
Yep.
So in terms of mental health and just wellness in general, we look at the experience of the person, generationally, intergenerational traumas, early childhood traumas, ongoing traumas, big T traumas, little T traumas. And so just that comprehensive picture really helps somebody understand why someone might struggle in the ways that they struggle.
Exactly.
Whereas in the clinical mental health framework, we look at someone and we say, oh, you're bipolar, you are, notice that language, you are. So we start labeling, we start creating.
I see the difference there.
And all of that is modeled off of observing behaviors and then diagnosing based off of behavior. It's not coming from a biological framework. So I'll start with big T. Big T trauma are typically things that we think of like going to Afghanistan, deploying in the military, going into active combat, a sexual assault, car accidents, 9/11, big stuff. There are plenty of people on this planet that have big T. There are also an extraordinary amount of people who have little T.
Yes. So pretty much everyone I know, I don't think you can come out of this world unscathed without having a little something happen to you along the way. It's a human experience. Yeah, it's a human experience.
Yeah, everyone's got the little T. So we have adverse childhood experiences.
And what does, if you don't mind diving into that, would that be something like watching your parents fight or going through a divorce or something like that? Or have a parent forgetting to pick you up one day, for example, and it just kind of, like the little kind of jab, but maybe they didn't do it intentionally, but
like, oh my God,
over time. Yeah.
All of these
no, like stuff like that. Yeah.
No, my kids have the little and the big T. I mean, we all have the big T and the little T. So yeah, all of the above, really. I think the negative side effect of the trauma world is that we keep trying to define this thing that it's not something that we can put into a box,
Yeah, definitely
right?
not.
So I could work with someone that has what's called an ACE score of 1. So just like you were referencing, that could be there was interpersonal violence in the home, or parents were always fighting, and we felt really unsafe when that was happening, or there was a divorce, or there was substance use, or there was trouble with the law. There wasn't a car accident. Nobody went to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
But that single event on repeat can have as much as a biological impact, if not greater than, deploying to a combat zone and coming home.
Is it just because it's repeated? If you don't start
Do-
scraping it off, it sticks.
exactly. It's dose, right? It's
Yeah.
all about dose. And it also is about environment, and it's also about biology.
Interesting. And how does biology take a play into all of this?
So people that I talk about a lot when I talk about trauma are Bessel van der Kolk, Gabor Mate, Deb Dana, Judith Herman, Stephen Porges. So there's a whole host of people out in the world that have been doing this for a very long time.
Yeah.
And we're just now starting to listen and pay attention. Gabor Mate, I did his training. He is a provider from your area. He's from
I know who he is. Yeah.
Vancouver. The one that I did was compassionate inquiry.
Yeah.
Yes, it was incredible. And in that, he talks about a study where we were looking for DNA in males that show signs of aggression. So, why are people violent and why do they tend to be males? Was the question.
Yeah.
And so, like any good research, right, we're going to go look for something. If we don't find what we're looking for, we might find something else instead. And so, they did an extraordinary job in this study. And what they found is that they couldn't identify a gene for aggression, but what they could identify was a gene for sensitivity. So I went and looked at this a little further. I say science savvy enough to be dangerous, but really my training is clinical.
Yeah.
I'm like, I get it, but not a lot of people really get it, you know?
Yeah.
And it turns out that there is DNA, and if I understand correctly, several different keys or gene types, or however you want to say it,
Like the
that
GPs, like the actual GPs.
yeah, that activate and turn on sensitivity in a person, right? And that doesn't mean like I'm emotionally sensitive, but more how I experience the sensory the process of interacting with my environment and how I'm biologically wired to handle that processing. So
Right.
sometimes we could have two different people who experience the same little t trauma or the same big T trauma and see two totally different outcomes. And we're like, what's that all about? Part of it has to do with biology, like how we're wired to experience these things around us. And I think another piece of it is who are the relationships that we have at the time that these events occur, and who's there for us, who's not there for us. How are we greeted in the midst of all of this intensity?
So back to some little trauma stuff, just to expand a little bit more. So if anyone listening can relate and be like, oh, maybe I do have like little traumas kicking around and maybe that is impacting, what might be a couple more examples, just like basic examples?
So, COVID, right?
Smart. Yes, that is. And I think because people also associate trauma with past, they don't realize that we get trauma daily.
Continually.
And
Yeah.
continually for the rest of our lives. So yeah, COVID's a huge one. So the whole world is essentially got a lot of little T's right now.
Tons of little T. So when you think about what COVID has been, it's like, I mean, I'm still like, wait, what? It's so, I don't know about you, but I'm like, I just like went home one day and nothing's been the same since.
Yep.
It's so bizarre.
Absolutely. Yep. My first recollection of all that was going to the grocery store and just seeing the sheer panic and the lineups and people clearing out the shelves. And I was like, oh, it's happening. Oh, it's happening.
It's happening.
And the toilet paper went first for whatever reason. That was interesting. Did you guys have that crisis in the States?
Oh my God.
Did you
Yeah.
as well? It was there. It was everywhere. Oh my goodness.
It's so
Anyways,
bizarre.
yes.
I have clients or colleagues who are working with clients who are really struggling to manage how has impacted everybody and continues to, sure. Whether it's the illness or the ambiguous losses that we've sustained, like
Jobs.
jobs and just social isolation.
Really
The
hard on families too. I know just from all the close.
Oh, totally. Do you get vaccinated? Do you not get vaccinated?
That
Oh
as well. Yeah, that's a
my
huge
God.
one. Yeah.
Masking or not masking.
Yeah.
And then having to manage the dynamics of all of that stuff
Yeah.
is
No kidding.
massive. And then, okay, another little T, political unrest,
Yeah, which
right?
we're experiencing right now. Yeah, or beginning
Yeah.
to. It's coming. But yeah.
Right? But it's like, oh my God, this is insane.
Yes.
What?
And admitting that and being and sitting with it and like really recognizing it is a great part of the process because it doesn't, I feel like for me personally, it doesn't give it as much like kind of shame and pressure. It brings it out and airs it out. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally.
I feel like it just like
100%.
the more we talk about it, just like makes it less crazy because then you can also like bond with another person and they get it too and you don't feel so alone and that's nice.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I think connection is really important. I think also being really mindful of who you build those connections with. I was reading another awesome book today. I'll grab it and I'll show it to you. I don't know if you're interested in it, but it's Polyvagal Exercises for Safety and Connection by
Interesting.
Deb
Very cool.
Dana.
What are polyvagal exercises?
I'm learning. Um, so this basically talks a lot about the vagus nerve and how there are three prongs to that nerve and
That's
how.
the numbing nerve, correct?
Oh yeah.
Yes, that's the one that numbs you out. Okay, I know that much. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it'll numb you, or so this is really interesting. It has three modes. It's like a light switch that you can have three settings with.
Joy.
Yeah, it's like no wonder the vagus nerve is so confused. So the vagus nerve will numb us out. It'll
And that's
just
like
go.
when and you shut down, it's like the flight part of fight or flight.
Yeah, in fact, I would say it's more freeze.
Okay. Yeah,
The
like
really weird,
yeah.
yeah, fight, flight, freeze. But the weird thing about the freeze response with humans is that we can freeze, but we can still also be fully operational in the sense
Yeah.
that I can talk and I can manage and move about. Meanwhile, I'm like totally disconnected from my body or any grounding in reality.
Yeah.
We have a freeze response. With animal models, we'll see like a full blown freeze. Whereas with
Yeah.
humans, it's like,
But it probably feels like I've only frozen a couple of times, but I've seen it in others where it's like pretty consistent when conflict arises and it's
yeah.
just like an immediate shutdown.
Mhm.
And animals, don't they like, can't they just like shake it off? Because my dog does that all the time. Like she'll just kind of like do this weird physical thing. I wish humans had that, but we
100%. I mean, you know, something that I talk about with my clients is the imperative relationship that they develop with their body. If you see an animal, like we were talking about our dogs before we turned this podcast on, your dog, my dogs will, if they're confronted with a situation where they're afraid, they'll run off. Or in unfortunate times that I've had with my dogs, they'll fight whatever's in front of them. So there's a biological, a physiological manifestation and processing out of all of those chemicals and hormones that flood the body when we're not safe.
yeah. Yeah.
Whereas we'll just sit here and like
Like
smile and
yeah.
talk together.
Just have your gears kind of grinding underneath the surface and you're like, oh, joy. The joys of being human. So fun.
Totally. And then you go to
But
yoga class and someone's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
unlock your door. And
That's
you're like,
the shake off. That's the shake off. It's like exercise and working out and yoga. Exactly. Yeah, I guess we do have one. It just takes a little bit longer and it's not just like instantaneous or you get to like flap your ears around and you're fine.
I know, right?
And so back to the book that you were talking
Oh,
about.
um,
I can't even remember.
Athena, polyvagal exercises.
Yes, polybagel. Thank you.
Polyvagal theory. So it's a cranial nerve. So it's this big fat nerve that comes out of our brain, basically. So we have the freeze response, and then we have a sort of this mid-range response, which is also a survival-based response. So we might not freeze, but we'll do some form of fight flight. Will be in some sense of like a hypervigilant state. And then we have the upper branch of the vagus nerve, which is our social engagement. It's rest and digest. It's everything's calm and okay. And we're just moving about. I'm going to guess that just in terms of macro populations, all of us to some degree are experiencing some consistent dosing around mid branch, lower branch of the vagus nerve activating, whether that's in micro doses or in big, massive doses. Again, I think that's person dependent, but we're talking about all these teens, all of this political unrest, all of this insecurity, all of this,
Uncertainty.
yeah, old world, new world. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
dystopic.
Yes. It is.
It's crazy.
It is. Acknowledgement, it's nuts. Yeah. We're going through a birthing tunnel. It's fucking crazy. It is. It's the longest birthing tunnel ever. 2 years. Come on. I can't even see the new world yet. I mean, I get glimpses, but
I just keep telling myself, I'm like, Age of Aquarius, something.
yeah, totally. Absolutely. I remember saying that, like, I guess it was last year that it really started coming into, and I was like, we're getting it. Oh my, yes, you get it too. I love it. That's excellent.
Something. I'm just like, whatever it takes right now. Yeah, totally.
Definitely. Definitely, definitely. And so when you work with people with little T's and like say they just have like one instance or a couple instances, like let's use heartbreak, because heartbreak is kind of
Ugh.
it's like it's current, it's happened when we're kids, it happens when we're adults. And I don't think people really, when they think of healing from heartbreak, I think they more so think of, oh, I'm just going to take the time and then time heals all wounds, like that old toxic. It is. It's totally toxic because it's so not true. Time does not heal shit. You have to work at it. Like, get off your.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. Things that we totally undermine and undervalue in terms of human impact are anything that we have to do where we're hiding, whether that's I recognize as a young boy that I'm gay, but I don't feel safe to come out, or, I'm born into a social system where I'm very wealthy, but most people around me aren't. And I feel insecure about people identifying my wealth, or in the reverse, I'm in a
Yeah.
wealthy community, but I don't have wealth. Heartbreak. Holy, holy. I mean, I have been through massive traumas. When I think about everything that I've been through in my life so far, I'm like, whoa. And at the same time, my life's been great and I have so many blessings and I'm very happy and I'm very privileged in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. Heartbreak has been one of the greatest teachers in my entire life. And part of the teaching has been that what do you hear after a very short period of time after going through a breakup? Get over it,
Yeah.
stop thinking about it. I'm surprised that this is coming up. Oh, you're still thinking about it? Or
Yeah. Way to shame someone who's like struggling.
yeah,
Yeah. Let's not do that, people. Let's not do that.
no,
Yeah. And every person
no.
has it, and it depends on the intensity and what happened throughout the duration of the relationship, the intensity of sometimes the duration, not always, but it can be a short relationship even. And it can have a huge impact on your life. And there are some dynamics that aren't the healthiest, and that can leave an impact in and of itself, not just the breakup, but it's like, hey, what you went through. I had a relationship once that had a lot of turmoil that had lasting effects that I wasn't actually willing to admit at the time, not until my next relationship I got into, and I was like, oh, I got issues now from that other bit because I didn't clear it out. Right. Okay. Okay. It's so fun.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, here's one. What about when you go through a breakup, not because anything toxic or dangerous happened, but because it was the right and mature and appropriate thing, right? It was a
Yeah.
breakup of respect.
Yeah. Yes. And that's, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a different kind of pain.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, because it's like you feel like for me personally, it's like, did I do enough? Was I present enough? Did I try this and that? Because there wasn't anything toxic there. So is there something to save? And it's that kind of lingering question that sticks in your mind. And sometimes it is, people haven't done enough, like often, like personally, myself, I've given up too soon before. And sometimes you try too hard. So it's like, where's the rule book and all this shit too?
Right.
Any rules, but all that can create like little scars in your heart and mind.
My gosh, totally.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, my work, you're asking about clients, like my work with clients constantly normalizing, normalizing, normalizing. I was just on a call with members of an organization here in Pennsylvania called Heal PA, which is a movement that the governor of the state has created and started and initiated to get what's called trauma-informed care embedded in all systems.
Wow, that's huge,
Yeah, it's huge.
isn't it? I mean, we don't have anything like that here. So,
It is.
does it have potential to be huge?
It has potential to be huge. One of the things that I recognize that we're struggling against, and I think this fits really well in with this call, is I'll say a lot before you go judging yourself or diagnosing yourself or evaluating yourself. First, take a look at your surroundings. So, what are the messages? What are the cultural expectations and implications of the system that you live in?
Mm.
And on the call was a woman who's been awesome, helping and working diligently with the criminal justice system here to hopefully start to turn how totally backwards it is in Pennsylvania in the United
Everywhere,
States.
yes, and the whole world, I think.
Like,
I don't think we
for-
have a proper justice system anywhere in my own, but that's a whole other
yeah, I
yes,
know.
anyway.
Who has that? I don't know. There are countries I think that are starting to clue in, but
Yes, I think so too.
sort of.
We can have hope.
Always. But we were talking about why or why not we would normalize helping people understand they had been exposed to trauma, even if they have a criminal record. And the idea, or one of the things going back and forth in the call was, well, if we tell people that they've been exposed to trauma and that might have to do with why they're doing the behaviors that they're doing that land them in the criminal justice system, will they use that as an excuse to perpetuate those behaviors?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And my answer to that is no, you need to teach them that they've been traumatized.
Yes. Well, yes, of course. Yeah.
You need to validate their experience,
Yeah.
or nothing's ever going to change. Nothing changes in this world
By
significantly
denying it.
by denying it, by pretending it's not happening, by omitting empathy, compassion, and connection.
Yes. I mean, they're both valid sides, so obviously there's boundaries and lines that have to be created within that framework in order for it to work and a lot of structure, but it's definitely more worth diving into it than it is just to throw a blanket over it and pretend like it doesn't exist.
Well, and then there's something that we talk about in the field of psychology and in trauma work, which is, I guess, some of the older language is protest behaviors. It's something we call protest behaviors. Well, what is a protest behavior? A protest behavior is a maladaptive coping to an environment that doesn't look at what is happening to you in your micro or macro system. So if you're a
Right.
person of color living in an urban environment in the cities of this country right now, yeah, I think your protest behavior, I'm not saying that that's what should happen. I'm not condoning the
Condoning it, but
behavior.
just giving some correlation between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if you're living in poverty, in continual violence and exposure to drug use and overdoses and just chaos,
Yeah.
yeah, eventually
Yeah.
you're gonna be really pissed
Yeah.
and do things that don't make
Yeah.
sense.
Yes. Yes. It makes a lot of sense that they would, and we're probably gonna see this becoming more perhaps, unless things make a slight turn here, a massive turn, but it's possible that we see this in a lot of other areas, and then we'll really understand it because it'll affect more people, and the more people it affects, the more we can understand, unfortunately. Sometimes it has to work that way. So with your call and this collective, are they making headway? Are there good positive changes happening in Pennsylvania because of this?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that we have a very passionate team of people across all sectors of public health that want to make a difference and are armed and educated with the right information. No, in the sense that one of the things that we're working against are policymakers and the structure of the American economy and what the value system is here. It's hard to create systems of health in a culture where money supersedes wellness.
Right. And
Yeah.
that is another unfortunate dichotomy within our macro ecosystems right now, anyways. But I think personally, with the emergence of new financial systems, we might see a change in that and new economies of scale and how we work with potential of Web3 and cryptocurrency. We might have cash
Right.
to throw around and all that. So that's something else that I've got my eye keenly and hopefully on, that the world will start evolving like that and money won't be as much of an issue anymore. But
Totally.
that's down the line. That's our utopia that we're heading to. So we're
Fair
thinking
enough.
now. We're thinking now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But to bring it back, I think I just went down a little rabbit hole there, but I just get so
Yeah.
excited about the thought about that utopia that I like light up. And I like to talk about it more. So more people will be like, oh, what is she talking about? And then look into it and then
Yeah.
realize the capacity and the potential there because it's huge. So, but back on topic here. So that's good that there are some changes coming. It's unfortunate that they rely heavily on the economy of cash and the Federal Reserve, but that is what it is for the meantime. And I also know we were touching on psychedelic therapies to switch gears here a little bit because I'm really excited about that. That's popping up in Canada quite frequently. We have centers now and healing centers and therapists working with psilocybin and MDMA and ketamine even. And so what is your background with that? Are you an enthusiast? Are you using it in your therapeutic settings?
I'm an enthusiast and I'm in the process of starting to work with a couple of providers in the area who are doing ketamine assisted therapy. Ketamine is like the wild west of psychedelic therapies
Mhm.
because of how it's scheduled in the United States.
How it's
So
different from
basically,
the narcotic, like it's a narcotic?
yeah, it's just, well, it's accessible to providers in medicine,
Oh,
whereas MDMA and psilocybin still are not because of how they're scheduled, which means they're illegal
right.
and
Yeah,
they're not legal for anybody to have access to or to use right
right.
now.
Mhm.
So,
Are there loopholes? Just to interject quickly, are there loopholes with that, with CB3 or whatever it's called? I thought there were some synthetic versions of MDMA that they're like that don't have any classification because they've just been invented and you can't classify something if it was just invented.
yeah, I think that stuff's starting to emerge, but I think, I just want to say to anybody listening, I am nowhere near an expert on any of this. So, again, I'm enthusiastic about it, but I don't feel educated enough to be able to speak to all of those nuances. But
Yeah.
from what I understand, if there are synthetic derivatives of these drugs, they're out there and you can't necessarily get into trouble. But as a provider in medicine, a doctor, I don't think would be able to offer that to a patient
Without
with
having
ramifications to their life.
yeah, that would make
That's
sense.
what I would guess is probably how that would go down. So ketamine's fun in the sense that there's already access to it. So we
Mhm.
can off label, well, we have been able to off label prescribe it based on the diagnosis, but it's also FDA approved for the treatment of depression. And I want to say it's FDA approved for PTSD. I know we're treating PTSD with it, but that might be off label. MDMA and psilocybin, we're still in the process of getting the FDA to approve those
Right.
for
And it's so
treatment.
like bizarre that the FDA has to prove something that nature created. It's like, what the heck? This is grows out of the ground, out of poop.
Hashtag cannabis.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah, totally. Very good point.
Are you
Is cannabis legal where you are in Pennsylvania?
uh, we have a medical program, so,
Okay, yeah, we do here in Canada as well. Well, it's
yeah.
not even we have more than medical. I think we can buy it at dispensaries now, but I still think you need to have some.
Do you have to have a diagnosis?
I'm not sure. I don't personally partake in cannabis. I know we have dispensaries everywhere. I think I bought weed for my cousin once who was underage at the time at a dispensary. I did too. And it wasn't a challenging thing. I was like, what am I getting myself into? But yeah, I remember it being relatively easy. Like it was about 5 years ago, but it was quite, or 4 years ago maybe, but it was pretty easy.
Yeah, here you have to have in Pennsylvania, you have to have a card, which is a fairly simple process.
Yeah, I had to get some kind of card too. So it sounds very similar.
Yeah, you're probably medical then.
So what do you think the benefits are and how does ketamine benefit when it comes to PTSD? And is it mostly used to treat big traumas or is it used to treat little traumas as well?
I'm in the process of learning about this with these doctors that I'm gonna be working with, but big T trauma and then what I would call inflexible depression. So just someone who has ongoing treatment resistant depression is typically what we treat with ketamine, which is interesting because ketamine is a dissociative. So it takes us out of the body,
Yeah.
whereas psilocybin and MDMA do different things. But I'm happy to share that I've never done ketamine. Maybe I was given it for some kind of procedure in the hospital or something, but
I have.
oh, you have?
Recreationally, yeah.
I never like
For years. Yeah.
I see people that have it. I'm like, wow, that looks pretty hardcore.
Yeah. It wasn't my favorite, but it was around and back in my troubled youth. So yeah.
Yeah.
And it is a dissociative, like it's bizarre, just the feeling. It's like you can observe your body, but you can't in any way really control it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
Right.
on a rocking chair on a dance floor once because I was unable to dance. Full disclosure, full disclosure. But
Kids listening at home,
yeah, yeah.
don't do that.
Absolutely. This is not medical advice
No. Oh
or
my God.
party advice. Do not do that.
No.
No, definitely not. But I do recall when it started coming to light because this is far before it was used in therapy, as far as I know, anyways. I do remember wondering how that element would come into play when it comes to actually using it in a therapeutic setting, because I was curious, and I haven't done much digging around that. So if you have any light to shed on how the disassociation attributes to healing.
Yeah. I mean, I learn mostly through, I'm almost like kinesthetic in the sense that when it comes to trauma work, like once I'm in there and I'm doing it and I'm observing how people move through the process, that's when it really clicks in for me. I'm not at that phase of it yet. I literally, after this call, in fact, I should probably just take a peek at my calendar. I'm good. I have a meeting with a doctor here in Pennsylvania and one in Texas, and the one in Texas is using ketamine and EMDR together. So
Oh,
really,
awesome.
I know, I'm
Very
super
cool.
curious to hear about how this is going to work. But
I'm also curious. You'll have to keep me updated on that.
yeah.
Brings me to my next. Oh, sorry. Did you want to continue?
Well, so what I was going to answer is fundamentally what I think happens for people, because I'm like, how does this work with the trauma piece? Is I think what happens is the body is so powerful, right? Like once we recognize that bad things can happen to good people and that you're walking along and then all of a sudden, like, boom, something horrible happens, an IED explodes, or your best friend dies, or you find out whatever it is that you find out, we don't let go of that information easily. And the body doesn't want to let go of it.
No. Yeah.
We're not supposed to,
No.
right? It's a primitive system that keeps us safe. It doesn't require thought. It doesn't require rationale. It doesn't require anticipation.
Biology. Yeah.
It's just, it's in the tissues, it's in the DNA, it's in the cells. So I think what ketamine's most powerful for, from what I gather and thinking about it from the treatment lens, is that it helps alleviate the distress that the body carries when the trauma resurfaces.
Yeah.
And then it helps get into those cortical structures that can observe the trauma from a more relaxed state and recognize a couple of fundamental things. And I'm really curious about the neurobiology of this. I'm guessing, and I don't know that this shows up in the research because I asked about it on one of the last calls, but I'm guessing part of it is the hippocampus, which
Ah.
is a part of the brain that helps the cortex recognize what's called sequencing, when something begins and when it ends.
Hmm.
And one of the things that's really prevalent in our veteran population is with those traumatic flashbacks and nightmares that are very typical to that community and other communities, is that the body and the brain don't recognize and don't remember that they're no longer there. They're no longer in Afghanistan. They're no longer in Iraq. They're no longer in Vietnam. That's the hippocampus's role, is to put a period at the end of that sentence. So I'm guessing there's some kind of engagement between the hippocampus and the cortex that the dissociative piece now allows, because we're no longer in the threat and stress response when the content emerges.
Right. Yeah.
And so all of those systems are like, everything clicks. And now all the circuitry and the wiring, like you were having trouble with your microphone when we first got on.
Mm.
It's like, I think ketamine is powerful in the sense that it helps remove basically the ego from the intense focus and hypervigilance around the trauma, so that the body and these primitive systems and these more sort of advanced systems can go, oh, we just need to plug this thing in over here. Okay, now we're good.
Yeah. Just a recircuit. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, and I wanna say to anyone who's listening that this does not alleviate grief, right? This doesn't make grief go away. It doesn't mean that you don't remember what happened.
Yeah.
It just means therapeutically that you can remember without,
Being attached to the feeling, maybe.
yeah, just like the visceral, like the lightning bolts of pain.
Yeah. That makes a lot
Yeah,
of sense. There, that makes a lot of sense. So you disassociate from mind body, but you also might disassociate internally within different structures of the brain. It would seem like kind of.
1000%. Yeah, they made me know that. Yeah, that's yeah.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
That makes, after thinking back on my experience, that makes a lot of sense.
Thank you to the rocking chair.
Yes, thank you, rocking chair. It literally saved my life. Literally saved my life. Oh,
But kids don't do it.
yeah, kids don't do it at home. Don't do it or on the dance floor.
Don't do it at all.
Funny, yeah. Too funny. And so we also touched on EMDR a little bit. If you have time to go into that slightly, I've experienced EMDR a couple times myself, but I haven't had a professional on here to talk about it from the professional perspective yet.
So for anyone listening, EMDR is an acronym for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So it was in its inception an eye movement based therapy that has now been adapted many times to a process that I use. Did you use the tappers or the hand?
She had was it a light?
Oh, light bar.
No, it was just the finger. It was just the finger.
Oh,
I remember seeing,
there.
I remember seeing a video and it had a light. So when I went in to do the finger, I was like, where's my light show? Like, I don't understand. This is so anticlimactic. I couldn't get over it. And my brain was like, no, just no, I need the light show. But I saw a YouTube video. It was a long time ago. But the YouTube video I saw had some kind of light thing or something. Such a difficult client I must be. But I went back for a couple rounds. It was good. No, it was good. I did feel, even without the light show, I felt some benefit.
Where's
What
the light? I don't want the finger.
I know. It would just seem so asinine. I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah, it's
But
a
it's
little
like,
bizarre.
but it does it does trigger something in the brain when you, and so explain that. And I did stick with it a bit to notice some differences, but I didn't stick with it long enough.
So you did what I would call the OG technique. So the sort of the original organic technique with
Yeah.
you following this the finger. Follow the finger.
Yeah.
So weird. And it took a while for the technique to take off. I think just because of that, like people are coming in and sitting across from a therapist, and the therapist is like, follow my fingers. And people are like, so weird.
Yeah.
So I have this little device where people hold these two little knobs, you could call them, in each hand, and they vibrate like when your cell phone rings when it vibrates. And so they vibrate back and forth. And I can adjust and modulate the intensity of that in terms of how intense the sensory piece of that is, and then the speed of the tapping. What's going on is going back to the hippocampus again. This is basically like physical therapy for your hippocampus. So, with a lot of toxic stress, chronic stress, or traumatic exposure, what happens oftentimes is the hippocampus becomes compromised. What is interesting about the hippocampus is it's most active during REM sleep. So, when someone's sleeping, they're REMing and their eyes are closed, their eyes are moving back and forth in their head like super fast, right?
Yep.
So what we're doing with EMDR is we're replicating REM. That's the best way to describe it. What's critical about that is REM sleep is where we go through organization, memory consolidation, sequencing. Like it's the time when the sort of like virtual assistant shows up and organizes everything on the desktop.
Gotcha.
So it helps reduce the fog.
Gotcha.
Traumatic exposure will also it's if you're in a rush to get out of the office at the end of the day and you just grab all of your files or charts and throw them in a drawer and close it, but not necessarily in alphabetical order.
Yeah.
That's what trauma does with memory.
Gotcha.
So EMDR goes in and pulls all of that stuff out and reorganizes it and puts things back where they belong.
That's a great way to describe it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it.
What else is really cool about EMDR? It's nonlinear. I call it sober ayahuasca.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's very like trippy, psychedelic. we do exercises where you go in and reconnect with that version of yourself at that time. We'll do hero exercises where you go in and you rescue yourself from something.
Yeah.
We'll do resourcing exercises where we bring in a lot of different helpers that help us feel protected and safe and loved and nurtured. And what that's doing is helping those primitive parts of the nervous system re-experience the trauma from a different perspective
Yeah.
and with a
Make it
level
not
of
so like if you're a victim per se, and if you have the heroes, then it flips that on its head.
it does. But here's the thing that's so interesting about it is it's all coming from inside,
Yeah.
right? So we're just finding lots of creative and funky ways to help someone recognize that they have resilience, that they survived things, that what happened is over, that they're safe,
Mm.
and that they're deserving.
Yeah. Oh,
That's another one.
oh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we all are, and a lot of us don't. Just as being human, I don't think we give enough emphasis to that, just the being deserving part, And I don't think that there's been enough importance put on that. So very good point. I love that.
Yeah.
Well
100%.
done. Yay. Well, we covered a lot of ground today. Yay. And I'm really excited to hear more about the ketamine and EMDR together as well. So we will definitely have to sit down again.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'd
Sure.
love to come back.
Cool.
I have in 45 minutes a meeting with someone who's been doing it. So I'm super psyched. And he's from Texas. He says y'all. So I'm like,
Y'all. Awesome. Bring him on the show. I'd love to talk to him too.
even in his emails, he'll sign
Really?
y'all or something. I'm like, oh my God, I love it.
So cool. I love it. So
I know.
cute.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for you. That's some new ground to cover and getting started with some new therapies. And I feel like we're doing that in a lot of areas of our life. People are just like, you can't just stick with one thing. You got to stick other things together. And it's amazing. We do that
Oh
with
my
food. We
God.
got fusion food, and now we have fusion therapy. It's
Totally.
great. It's awesome.
Well, okay. So I'll leave you with this, or I mean, I don't have to leave you anything. I don't know if we're finished yet, but the thing that is so exciting to me about the MDMA and psilocybin research, and I want everyone to listen to this part. It's not the drug alone where the power lies. It's the drug combined with the therapeutic healing.
Exactly.
That's where we
That's where the
see
magic is. Yeah.
the effectiveness. Why is that? Because we are designed for connection.
Yes.
That
Yes.
is where healing happens.
Very true.
It's
Yeah.
not in the
Internal
bottle.
connection and external connection. Yeah.
Yes.
It's not in the bottle. No.
Not in the bottle.
Nope.
That's your vehicle,
Yeah.
right? That's your rabbit hole, but it's here,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
It's in the relationship. So
Very true. Yeah, that's a very valid point as well. And I know some people, when they're trying to heal, and I have been one of them, the desire to withdraw can be really strong.
oh yeah.
And that's just what we do, I think, by default. Some of us, not everyone, but that I have experienced that. I've experienced being with somebody who does that. Yeah, I think we've all done, depending on the circumstance. I think we've all done it at some point in our life. And that it goes against what helps us heal, but it feels very natural to want to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think sometimes that's an avoidant attachment style that's
Yeah.
kicking in or the flight response. And then I know for me, like I am anxious attachment girl.
Yeah, me too. I'm
Oh my
tired and
God.
anxious now, though. But
I know now I'm like, I don't know why.
I'm really very anxiously attached. But it also depends on the other partner as well. If you're with a
Totally.
super avoidant person, it's going to make you even more anxious. Hello, been in that dynamic.
Yeah.
And
Or
that's why if you don't both heal that part of the attachment, both relinquishing your anxiousness, and they were relinquish their desire to run, that it can work, but
right.
it takes that work. But
Yeah. I
did EMDR help with your anxious
oh
attachment?
my God. EMDR has completely changed my life in ways that I can't even, I don't know if I can put words to, and I'm pretty good at putting words to things.
Yes, you are. That is substantial. That I've only known you for about an hour, but yes, you definitely have a connection from your brain to your words, for
Mouth.
sure. So yeah, a brain mouth connection.
It's strong.
God, it's strong. I love it. Oh, the sass. But yeah, that's a substantial evolution then, if you can't move words to it. But it does. evolved, but still it kind of lingers. I don't know. Mine can creep up out of nowhere sometimes, but I have to get present. And then it's a part of like doing the work is that you have to reflect and go back on some of that work and pull it into the present and then reutilize it.
Yeah, I will say that my anxious attachment has definitely cooled its darn jets finally. Um,
Amen.
I mean, it pops up where I'm like, "Stop doing
Yeah.
it."
Give it a big fat middle
Ye
finger.
Motherhood has definitely tested the waters there, big time, and I've gotten pretty good, and I also have empowered my children to be like, "Yo, sister love, put the brakes on," you know?
Yeah.
Um,
That's good. Boundaries.
yeah,
Boundaries.
yeah, it's safe for them to call me out if I'm,
Yeah.
doing my BS, but,
Helicopter mom.
I don't think I was ever rarely did I helicopter. The only times I helicoptered is if I saw an injustice happening in my children's lives, and then I was like, "No, no, 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 no."
Uh-uh.
But for the most part, I think that they're really independent boys, but I would say there are places where anxious attachment is really powerful and really important, and avoidant attachment is really powerful and has its place. So,
Like, where would that be? Just out of curiosity, because in my experience, I don't like it. It's not
yeah, no, it feels like garbage when it's happening, but a place where avoidant attachment can have really good utility is in an ocean full of people who are doing anxious attachment.
create. It makes you have to
Yeah.
relinquish to control your anxious.
Yeah, you just gotta step back. Like, my dad is definitely an avoidant attachment person, and it can be extremely, like, just not good. It doesn't have utility. And then there are other times where it's exactly the right ingredient to just step back and not engage in the situation and wait for
Yeah.
the dust to settle and then reemerge.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah. That's true.
all.
That's true.
Yeah, all attachment styles have a negative and a
Have a purpose.
positive.
Yeah.
They have their purpose.
Yeah, that's true.
And
And if
then,
there were two avoidants in a relationship, I mean, some shit might never get solved, and it
oh,
might just be two people avoiding each other till they obviously aren't together.
oh my God,
So
there's a
but
picture in my head.
and then the two anxious people would be so damn codependent together, it would just they would go into a spiral to hell. So I think the balance between anxious and your face. I thought the computer froze for a second. That was awesome. Uh, but like, they do kind of there's a purpose for both of them. There's a purpose. I love it.
I'm just thinking about a relationship that I was in where people had
You really went there. You were like, river.
real-time trauma flashback on
Yeah,
screen.
John flashback. Oh my goodness. Yes, same. I've
Hardcore.
experienced that a few times. I don't actually think I've ever had any other attachment style that I've been in a long-term relationship with that hasn't been in some way or another. Substance abuse is also avoidant. Like that can bring in some feelings of avoidance. My mom had severe substance abuse growing up, and
No.
one of my partners did as well. And that is avoidant because they're not quite present. You know what I mean? Even though they may not be
Yeah.
running, but they're still not fully present. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, I
The
mean,
same.
yeah, my whole life has been severely impacted by addiction, 100%. It's so hard.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's another thing that Age of Aquarius and this new awareness around trauma and whatnot will alleviate a lot of that to substance abuse. And so hopefully generations moving forward won't be growing up with that so much. I'm sure people will always utilize and stuff, but in my utopia, people are going to utilize the stuff to a non-detrimental degree and everyone can live happily ever after.
Yeah, totally. I mean, here's the thing. What does utopia really look like? It's looking at recognizing that those things exist,
Yeah.
giving language for it, normalizing it, having processes to work through it.
Yes.
It's not a world where we're without struggle.
Yeah. It's
It's
balance.
letting struggle.
Yeah.
It's like we have systems that don't let struggle exist, and they create significant more amounts of struggle as a result.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. If you don't bring light to it and awareness to it, then it just adds more layers of shit on top of the already pile of steaming crap. So
Criminal justice system.
yeah, there we go.
Steaming pile of crap.
Yeah, that is
But it is.
exactly what that is. Oh, it
It is.
absolutely is. Oh, I agree with you. Oh,
I used to feel like I had to speak so like professionally about the different systems. Now I'm like,
We have to
hello.
speak openly about it. Yeah, we have to.
Yeah.
And I was even at the beginning of this pandemic and everything, I kind of kept my mouth shut about a lot of stuff. And even when people were protesting and I was like, just stay the F home. And now I'm like, oh, and now I'm like, I see what they were getting at. They just saw things a little bit sooner than I did and saw what was actually going on. And now I'm open about it. And the more I'm open about it, I've noticed some of the people that were dead against what I was saying have now come around. And that's what being vocal does. It brings awareness, it brings light. And if the people want to dive in and do their own research and then realize, hey, and a light goes off in their own mind and they're like, oh shit, that's where
Mhm.
we're at. And we're at
Yeah.
a very large injustice right now. So I'm glad I'm vocal. I'm glad I got over my fear around that. And I don't care if I upset people or annoy people with it. I keep it to a nice balance, happy medium, but just enough that people can start critically thinking for themselves,
Mhm.
and that I think is super important.
Yeah. That's
It's a whole other rabbit hole.
yeah. I mean, we're in such a I just found out today that one of the larger providers of healthcare in this country just slipped it into the update in their benefits letter that they're taking behavioral health care out of the insurance panel will provide for
Oh,
their
no. So is that
participants.
like any kind of therapy or
Yeah, just seeing a therapist, a
uh,
counselor,
you
getting
have to
mental
pay for
health.
that separately?
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
Which is already happening here. I mean, I'm a self-pay out-of-pocket therapist just because of all of that. And I work with clients for reimbursement and all kinds of stuff and work with a nonprofit that subsidizes counseling. Like I do everything in my power to make, you know,
accessible.
yeah, create access to mental health care in our community. But
Amazing.
wow, like
It's
I was
helpful
just
to
like,
have that.
wow, you did that. Like you did that.
Probably
Like
didn't make a big sign about it, weren't very obvious about it. So yeah, just went to go get your next appointment. Like, yeah, you're not covered.
BT dubs. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
he
every
does.
time.
Yeah.
At the beginning of what will be the largest wave, and it's already starting, talk about a tsunami, but of mental health
Health crisis.
needs.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think I don't think any of that is unintentional who these healthcare providers work for, what the companies that they work with, government, and it all kind of works seamlessly together. So, this is no secret anymore. It is pretty apparent that our mental health it's critical for it not to be in a very good standing right now, or else it's hard to control people if they are of sound mind. It's really easy to control people if they are hungry and if they don't have proper emotional care and physical care and all that.
Yeah, and like those are those conversations where I'm like, I totally see where people come from and how our thoughts and observations of things can lead to that. I also think, regardless of whether it coming from a belief or a perception that there is some kind of attempted control going on, even if we take that piece out of it and you boil it down to just what fuels this economy the way that it is designed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where that face comes in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
It's
needs to be
not
restructured as
it's
well.
not about wellness. It's just
No,
not.
it's just about money. Yeah, I know. It's really sad. Very
Yeah.
sad. Well, hopefully that can switch too. The more people realize how imperative emotional and physical wellness is and how much they combine with each other, that we
Yeah.
can
So
start. Yeah.
I think COVID is starting to help people reevaluate their value system. I think it's powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I think so as well. I agree with you for sure.
Mhm.
Thank goodness we needed that. Little did anyone know that some good can sprout from this chaos is because it did really make people sit down and question their belief systems and their core values and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, we are emerging anew. I'm gonna like to think so.
Ring of fire. We're just going through the ring of
Fire.
fire.
Yeah. Yeah. Johnny's up there singing. He's like, you guys got this. Oh, what? I'm not. God damn it. I'm getting silly. My tea's really getting to my head. Black
Oh
teas,
my
though, highly caffeinated.
Oh, and yeah, I had to give up the big C, the
The
caffeine.
caffeine. Yeah, I haven't done that yet. I thought about doing it, but I don't know. These days, I might give it a whirl just to like at least take it out for a short period and see how it affects me. But I do everything in moderation. I'll have a nice tea with me while I interview because it gives a little pep in my step. But that's
Oh,
it.
totally.
And one
Yeah.
coffee in the morning too. Anyways, now we're going down rabbit holes that don't matter. We don't need to do that. Excellent. Well, my laptop is about to die, so I think that was perfect timing. And I don't have it plugged in because this is my new setup, and it's like not really, none of it worked. My new microphone didn't work. Nothing. My new light went out halfway through. So thank you, Mercury retrograde. And I couldn't plug in my laptop. I was like, fuck off. Oh man. Welcome back to season 2.
Oh, good start. Good start.
Yeah, totally. Good start. Off to a great start. Well, thank you so much for coming. This was such a delightful conversation. After reading all of your articles, and I'll link to them below because they were super entertaining, very insightful and brilliant. Really got a sense that I got to know you through your articles. So
Cool.
sharing your wisdom with the world.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So I'll talk to you soon.
All right, lady, take care.
Thanks. You too. Bye.